Hi, welcome back to Try Something New today. Today's journey, we are starting off at Anchorage's Red Apple in Mountain View. This is kind of an interesting grocery store. At one point in the 60s and 70s, when my family would travel in from the bush, this was the only grocery store in town. But now Anchorage has grown up huge all around it, and the neighborhood has changed as well. At this point, I hate to call it one of our lower income neighborhoods, but it is, and it's become incredibly diverse. The two elementary schools in this neighborhood have over 100 languages spoken each. And so what used to be, the city's major grocery store has really turned into this really wonderful, incredible international market of its own. So let's go in and see what we can find. All right, maybe you figured it out. This week we are working with taro. Now that's the most common name for this root corm. So this is a large one. It was labeled as pink taro. You can see it's kind of hairy. It's got lines in it. As I said, it's a corm. It is a root in that it grows underground. But the difference between something like a potato, which is a tuber, and a corm, here's some of the small mini taro, is that a corm is going to grow vertically, as does a potato, with a single stalk. So this would be where the plant would grow off of this taro. It might actually be known as dashin, based on the way it looks. I could be wrong. Maybe if you know, that would be great to know. As where a potato, each of those eyes on a potato is going to grow. It can grow into another branch. So that makes a corm different from a potato. You can chop a potato into sections. Each eye could grow a new plant. With a corm, you're only going to get one plant. And then, just for your information, a rhizome grows horizontally and is a place for other roots to grow off of as well. So these are all ways that a plant could store up some food energy for itself, for the dry season, for the rainy season, for whatever season the plant is needing that extra energy. And that is why they are so full of carbohydrates. And so there's tons of different kinds of roots, corms, tubers, and rhizomes that are eaten all over the world that thank you, plants, for storing up energy for us humans to consume. So as I mentioned, there's a couple different names that the taro goes by. Taro is the most common, but there are other names as well. Some of these plants look a little bit different than the taro that you might commonly see. One I'd like to point out in particular here is arrowroot. Usually arrowroot is sold as a powder, and it is a really great thickening agent. And so if you've seen that around, now you know that it is actually ground dried taro. So let's go check out what we can do with taro. All right, welcome to our humble kitchen. Here I have a bowl of the mini taro, and we have our full-size large taro there as well. They're both going to be processed in the same way. If you have a particularly hairy one, you can scrub it off before you peel it, but you're just going to go around either with a vegetable peeler or with a knife and peel off this outer layer until you have just the white inner core. It's going to be the same for the large ones or for the small ones. All right, here are my cleaned and prepped taro roots. You could probably use a vegetable peeler just as well, but it probably takes just as long. If you rinse them, you want to pat them dry, as these do tend to be, I don't want to use the word gummy, but that is true. The smaller ones more so than the larger ones. So that may be your choice. They're also going to be less prep work for a larger one because it's less skin proportionately. But this is what I had available. And I'm just going to make a small batch of my first recipe to sort of get your feet wet and show you some new ideas. All right, so this first recipe uses boiled taro for our Trinidad style dish, what they might call ground provisions. Ground provisions would be any type of root vegetable. In this case, I just used taro. They also really commonly use sweet potatoes, yams, plantains, even though they're not a ground vegetable. They boil it, sometimes they steam it, and then they top it with any number of different things. Sometimes they put the vegetables, these ground provisions as they call them, right in their soup. But this one is kind of mashed, slightly mashed boiled taro. It has pigeon peas and smoked, I use smoked salmon. They might use dry fish, salted cod. So here's what pigeon peas look like. Here's good old Alaska smoked salmon for this one. It's very delicious. It's got just a little bit of heat. If you chose to use a Scotch bonnet pepper that was not cut open. It's saucy. It's got some chicken bouillon in it. Oh, and the main ingredient would be coconut. It's got coconut milk, and that's really what makes it kind of Trinidad. This concept is very Caribbean, but the coconut makes it very Trinidad. I gotta tell you that I am really pleased with the way this dish turned out. The taro is really soft, but it does have kind of that sticky starchiness. The smoked salmon brings just a nice smoke to it. The pigeon peas hold their texture really well. They're not mushy. They've only been in here for a few minutes, but they have a good nuttiness to them that I haven't noticed in a lot of other peas. This is the first time I've used them. And then I also, a very first time for me, used cilantro with a U. It also goes by the name of Ngogai, maybe Ngogay. Tastes like cilantro, but with kind of a lot of extra depth to it. And so Andrew was really interested in that. By using the the chicken bouillon in here, you don't get this flat coconut flavor. You don't feel like you're eating a dessert or something Asian. I used allspice, ground allspice. So it's just a really neat way to use ingredients that are used all around the world, but Trinidad has their own style, and this was really fun. And I'll definitely be making it again, as it's not spicy. It's really a great fun use for our smoked salmon. My second recipe for the week shares two things very specifically in common with our first recipe. It has coconut milk, and of course it has taro. But instead of using the allspice flavors from the Caribbean, we're going to jump completely to the other side of the world and use turmeric and coriander to make ourselves a mild Indian curry. This was a recipe that I originally made, maybe a couple weeks ago, for Nathan and I, looking for some sort of a sweet Indian flavor that wasn't going to be spicy for him. It was really fantastic. And so when I started playing around with the taro, I thought, hey, what a great way to incorporate something that was already good, and a new type of root vegetable. I also had a little bit of yam, that African yam left over from previous, and as I used in the original recipe, paneer cheese. So if you haven't worked with paneer cheese, it's very Indian, as in Indian. It's kind of squishy, and you wouldn't think it's going to be soft like Monterey Jack, but it actually can withstand being fried. So it's perfect because you can get this nice golden crisp on it, and it holds together just like the other root vegetables. For this recipe, I also used some of the pigeon peas that were left over from the last recipe. A lot of uses of the word recipe today. It's fantastic. It's sweet. It's not spicy, although it would be super easy to add some chilies if you wanted to. The sautéed taro and yam still have some texture and some firmness and crispness. You can use potato completely to replace the taro or the yam if you don't have any, but it is going to be soft all the way through, as where the yam and the taro kind of have a little bit different consistency. It gives you some different options. So it's just neat to play with different root vegetables instead of always using the same things. You can tell that the turmeric really gives it a nice yellow flavor, but be careful not to use too much because it can really get bitter. I mean, you have to use, I can't even say quite a bit too much, and it will get bitter on you. All right, now my third recipe hails not so much from a cultural region, but from a collective ideal of people, culture. It wasn't intended to, but I have ended up with a vegan patty. As I was using my ingredients, I had taro, of course, which I shredded, and I used carrot and some leftover radishes that I had. I don't know if it was the color or kind of the flavors. The radish really kind of brings a funk to it. I mean, I don't want to say funk like, stinky cheese funk, but it reminded me of salmon. And so I started playing around with other ingredients to add flavor to it. I really wanted it to have that salty brine flavor, that oceany fish flavor, and I thought about using smoked salt, but no matter how I did it, trying to get the saltiness, enough of the smokiness out of the salt, it just ended up being way too salty. So I instead chose smoked paprika, and I used a Spanish smoked paprika. It's quite mild. It's got a nice smoky flavor. And then I just finished it off with a smoky pepper on the outside, so cracked smoked pepper. To get that nice fish flavor, I used seaweed crisps, those little snacks you get in the package. And everything worked together really nicely. The taro has enough texture that I don't want to say gums, but it gives you sort of this nice protein texture in there. And then finally, for that nice umami flavor that you need, this big word that's been used a lot lately, umami, I put miso, and it just brings a fantastic umami with the seaweed, ocean, fish flavor. I'll show you the inside. So, fish cakes, a salmon rice cake, is by nature, by itself, it's just a salty, smoky, fishy cake. And in a positive way. But we know, of course, that's only the beginning place. So take this basic recipe and add flavors that you like. If you want it to be lemon and dill, or if you want something garlicky, or a particular region of the world, or spicy or peppery, just add some of those ingredients into the mix. And maybe a little bit of cornstarch. If the ingredients you add are wet or don't want to stick particularly well, like maybe chopped green onions, something like that, a little bit more cornstarch will help keep your cake together. We're about to go on a picnic with my folks. I bet they might like these, even though they're not vegan. It's a vegan smoked salmon patty.
Okay.
So there's not actually any salmon in there.
Oh, okay. Mm. It's vegan, all right.
It's not too bad.
Yeah, it tastes good though. I like it.
It's made out of taro root and carrots. It gives you that nice orange color. I made a sandwich for it.
Orange, yum. Well, Jay might get some. I don't know. Maybe he won't.
Burger?
It's a sandwich. Yeah.
It's fine.
It's fine. There you go. It's vegan and it's fine. That makes it acceptable.
It tastes good.
All right. Well, that was fun. The last recipe that I want to show you, most people are pretty familiar with taro chips, and I did make some. So they're real thin, like potato chips. When you cut them, you want them to be really thin. They're very crispy. With that in mind, I suggest not only cutting them really thin, but not cooking them too long. You can see that these have just a bit of golden, and you can see that the speckles on the inside there, that contrast really comes out when you fry them. That's kind of how you're going to know that they're getting to be done. Here's one that hasn't been fried, and you can see that they're obvious, but not nearly such golden color. If you go anything past a little bit of yellow golden, if you get into more of an orange golden, they're going to be really firm and, in my opinion, not as pleasant. So really don't over fry these. So along with the idea of the taro chips, which is pretty popular, a little bit of salt on those is perfect, or whatever flavor you like, I decided to make something a little bit more like a cracker. And so I took some thicker cuts and I deep fried those. Now this is going to be a similar idea in that you don't want to over fry these. The outside edges are going to cook more. You can see that here. And if they're too dark, they're going to be hard and really crispy. I'll show you some ideas what to do with them in a minute here. It really only takes about 45 seconds for the first fry and about 45 seconds for the second fry. So I do a 2-fry method. That's what a lot of people who do French fries and chicken wings, there's a little bit of secret there, industry secret. It's a really great way to get the outside nice and crispy and the inside cooked all the way through. The first cook cooks at about 75%, and then the last cook is to crisp them up, at least in chicken wings. These, there's not so much to cooking them. But you have this nice, soft, sort of bread-like inner section there, and a crispy outside. You can eat this as is, season them however you like as a snack, but my suggestion is to top them with whatever you like. Originally, I was gonna make these really thin. I was thinking that they could be tostado, but they're a lot crispier than your corn or flour chips. And so I decided that by doing them a little bit thicker, you have this nice, soft, easy to eat inner section. And for anyone who's avoiding bread, this is a vegetable that's a good choice. It's also a better choice than potato for nutrition. Here I topped it with some of that Chinese style pork and then the Chinese hot mustard. Really good. If you're vegetarian, you can pick things that don't have meat involved, obviously. So that's my last suggestion for what to do with taro. Here's a real particularly thick cut one that I did. You can use one of those mandolins if you'd like, or just slow down and take your time and use a regular straight blade. I think as far as bits of advice for buying taro, when you're buying the mini ones, don't buy the teeny tiny ones, because by the time you peel them, you're gonna have this tiny little thing to work with, and they're kind of milky, and so it's gonna be real hard to hold on to those little things. Don't worry if they're hairy. Mine have started to discolor a little bit because they've been in the fridge, and so I just trimmed those parts off. It's not a big deal. You want to cook taro all the way through. It can be a bit of an irritant to your skin or your mouth. If not, I don't know the details on that, but if you cook it all the way through, you won't have a problem. So if you haven't tried taro, I highly suggest it. If you have the large taro at your market, go for it. They're great to work with because you don't have nearly as much peeling to work with. You can make large slices. That's what I use for that larger piece of taro. If you only have the little guys, they're great. Shred them up or fry them into chips, mash them, bake them, steam them, anything that you'd want to do with any potato or other root vegetable. Put them in a soup, put them in a stew. You can do those with taro as well. So I hope that these have been helpful for you. I hope that you are interested in trying something you hadn't tried before. Maybe it's not taro, maybe it's some other flavors that were put together today. And just keep learning new things and definitely try something new. So we'll see you soon.